In this module, let's look at the technological environment. Remember, in the environmental scanning process, we want to look obviously at the micro environment, those things that are unique to our industry, but the entire macro environment, all the things outside of us. And one of the very, very important ones is the technological environment. Now, remember our definition of technology. Technology is the application of tools and or knowledge to solve problems. Technology is the application of tools and or knowledge to solve problems. So if we want to look back through history and look at the greatest technological advances, they're the wheel, fire, the lever, the pulley, those things that just dramatically changed the human existence. Shipping all of a sudden led to trade. The railroad also greatly expanded trade and personal travel. The cotton gin. Everybody read about the cotton gin back in 5th grade history. It was invented in 1794. Why is that important? Well, the cotton gin allowed for cotton to be separated, the fiber within cotton to be separated from the seeds, and that allowed for cotton fiber to be used in clothing. So that was a hugely important technological advancement because that dramatically changed the development of clothing. Remember the big, most important things in most people's lives: food, shelter, clothing. So those things that impact food, shelter, clothing are extremely important. On the heels of the cotton gin, which was patented by Eli Whitney in 1794, was the invention of the sewing machine. Here's an interesting little historical footnote, but this is what ties into our marketing. Singer, most people are familiar with Singer as the inventor of the sewing machine in 1851. That's actually not true. Singer patented the sewing machine. But the sewing machine, the modern sewing machine, was actually invented by an Englishman 6 years earlier, but he screwed up the patent process. And so it was Singer who successfully patented this sewing machine, became very, very well known as the inventor, even though that's not true, and from a financial standpoint, reaped all the benefits of it because of the patent. Intellectual property, and patents are a huge part of intellectual property, is a very, very important part of marketing. Continuing on with technology, especially that impacted food, shelter, clothing, before I get to that, the car obviously was a huge change in technology for transportation. The refrigerator dramatically changed how people procured food for personal consumption. You didn't have to go shopping every single day for food at the local market. Take a wild guess what that is. That's a washing machine. That's an early version of the washing machine. Of course, that changed the issue of clothing. You could wash clothes more easily. The elevator was very important. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's convenient, but so what? Before the elevator, you had to walk upstairs. How many floors would you walk up before it was impractical? The elevator changed the urban landscape and allowed for skyscrapers, very, very high buildings. Air conditioner. Now, again, many people might think, well, yeah, air conditioner, it makes the room more comfortable during hot days. But if you look at a map of the United States in 1940, before the widespread of air conditioning, there were huge swaths of land that were practically uninhabitable. Arizona and other very, very hot places, it was impossible to live there when it got so darn hot in the summer. But now with air conditioning, that made lots of places much more inhabitable. Coming more to the present, although this picture certainly is not the present, that was an early computer. The amount of computing power in this picture is significantly less the computing power in the phone that you've got in your pocket. But the dramatic increase in computing has changed a lot of things. Here's the so-called first personal computer from IBM, the IBM PC. Here's what early laptops looked like. And of course, nowadays you can carry all that computing power in your pocket. That was the first version of the iPhone that came out in 2007. Disruptive technologies, and these play a huge part in the product landscape. Disruptive technologies disrupt or change existing ways of doing things. And certainly electronics have had a lot of disruptive technologies. Earlier I talked about the slide rule. Well, that was completely eliminated by the pocket calculator. Here was a very, very fancy business calculator, the Hewlett-Packard 12C. You can now get a Hewlett-Packard 12C app to put on your phone. Costs, I believe, $5.99, that will then perform those functions. Film. Kodak held a number of patents in film and photography and film processing, but film for photos has given way largely to digital, and as a result, Kodak went bankrupt, even though, and we'll talk about this in class, Kodak was at the forefront of the invention of digital technology. Speaking of going bankrupt, Blockbuster, is not around anymore because the distribution of movies went digital, and of course Netflix benefited from that. Blockbuster was a little too late on that. People didn't need to go pick up a physical copy of a movie anymore. Here's the cover from Popular Mechanics in 1994, Understanding the Information Superhighway. That's what people called the internet back in the early days. And I'm going to blow that up a little bit. Understanding the Information Superhighway, the greatest social revolution since the automobile. That is not overstating it. In fact, that might be understating it. How you'll shop, bank, learn, be entertained, and more via interactive TV. The internet has been one of the most disruptive technologies of all time because it has changed so many different businesses. Now, let's get a little bit more limited in our scope. That's a shopping cart. Now, on the one hand, you might think, how is that technology? Remember, it's the application of tools and or knowledge to solve problems. This allowed for self-service shopping. Speaking of the grocery store, that was a huge technological advance in the grocery industry and in other packaged goods. The UPC, the Universal Product Code, allowed for scanning. This not only made checkout simpler, but it allowed for rapid changing of prices. Didn't need to physically price goods anymore, and it allowed for much tighter inventory management. Now let's bring this up to the present. A major announcement in 2017 was Amazon's purchase of Whole Foods. This could be a very disruptive event in the grocery industry because prior to Amazon buying Whole Foods, internet shopping for groceries was limited to very, very, very specific, limited things. It was not the least bit widespread, but who knows what's going to happen with regard to that as a result of Amazon's purchase of Whole Foods. E-learning is another area that is still somewhat embryonic, perhaps barely scratching the surface of what it might eventually do, but it certainly has the capability of completely disrupting the entire education system. Technology, the application of tools and or knowledge to solve problems. Disruptive technologies dramatically change the way things are done.